Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Piccirilli. It's your turn, and I just want to be very clear. Are you speaking for all three together, or are you speaking for them one at a time?
I think I've already answered that. As an initial matter, I want to strenuously object.
Excuse me, I would like to...
I apologize. I should have recognized NEAB first.
I'm sorry. Excuse me?
I should have recognized NEAB. NEAB is the collective bargaining representative for teachers in Barrington, recognized by the State Labor Relations Board. I apologize for that.
And what's the purpose of recognizing the NEA?
Because they are the collective bargaining representative as determined by the Rhode Island State Labor Relations Board.
They are not here representing my clients.
With all due respect,
I was told by John DeCubelis, your boss, the general counsel of the NEA, that under no circumstances was the NEA going to represent my clients.
That is a total lie.
And then suddenly, I
That is a total lie.
we're not going to go back.
I want to put it on the record.
You can put whatever you want on the record. That is a total lie. That is
I have the email, and then suddenly, no, I'm not done. Are you going to stop me from making my presentation?
Yes, right now I am, because I'm recognizing.
Fine, I'll let her go. Let's get this over with. Go ahead.
The NEAB is recognized under state law as the collective bargaining representative.
My name is Jennifer Azevedo. I'm Deputy Executive Director of NEA Rhode Island and General Counsel for NEA Rhode Island. I'm here on behalf of NEA Barrington and NEA Rhode Island. These three people are members of NEA Barrington, and I'm here representing them in their interests. With respect to, insofar as they are, thank you. Insofar as they are members of the collective bargaining unit. And I have a few remarks for the committee today. The facts of the matter are thus. In August of this year, the school committee amended its general and interim emergency policy of COVID-19 related issues to include a vaccine mandate with no other alternatives. NEAB bargained the effects of this mandate pursuant to law, and it was agreed that any sick time that had to be discharged because of illness due to receiving the vaccine or the booster would be covered by the district and not discharged from the members' personal allotment of sick days. On October 18th, Superintendent Michael Missouri notified the members of NEAB who had not been vaccinated, who had objections to taking the vaccination, that they would be terminated, and that the fact that they would refuse to get the vaccination placed an undue burden on the district. The members who do not get vaccinated by November 1st will be placed on unpaid leave. Their health benefits will continue with co-share only until December 31st, 2021, and on January 1st, 2022, employment with BPS will be terminated. On October 22nd, Superintendent Missouri sent a follow-up letter to the remaining members who were still not vaccinated to inform them of their rights at this evening's pre-suspension and pre-termination hearing. NEARI does not dispute the district's ability to mandate the COVID vaccine as a condition of employment with BPS. We are proud of the fact that an overwhelming number of our members have been fully vaccinated in an effort to keep our community safe. We also acknowledge, however, that there may be objections which would prevent members from receiving the vaccine. At present, there is no statewide mandate for teachers to be vaccinated, and there are other school districts, while requiring vaccination against COVID-19, also allow for mitigation risk via high-quality masks, twice-weekly testing, social distancing, air quality management, and food sanitation. Newport is among one of the school districts that allows for a vaccine or test. The union is asking that for these members who have expressed an objection to the vaccination, that the school district not place the members on unpaid leave and reject Superintendent Missouri's recommendation to terminate. The school committee should allow these vital members of the Barrington community to continue in their employment by using mitigation strategies against COVID-19 that are already in place in school districts and are proven to work. To lose these excellent teachers would be a disservice to the Barrington Public Schools and the children that they serve. These teachers have been with these students for 2 months. To terminate their employment is a death knell to their career, and their objection to the vaccine should be noted, and if there should be alternatives provided so that they can continue with their employment with the district. Thank you.
Ms. Azevedo, one moment, please.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
And I apologize to you again. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Ms. Azevedo, the Deputy General Counsel of NEARI? Any questions from the committee? Thank you.
Actually, can I ask one
I do
question?
have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You did mention that there was one school district that also requires vaccines. You had mentioned Newport
Does vaccine or test?
Yeah, Newport does vaccine or test. Is there another district that does vaccine mandate?
Yes, Little Compton.
Thank you.
I also just want to add one more thing, which I forgot to mention. Greg Piccirilli is here on behalf of these members. He's been retained by these 3 members. Normally, we would have an objection to having private counsel participate in this proceeding, but we are giving him an opportunity to present whatever case he wants to present with regard to any private causes of action or any other arguments that he wants to make to the committee without objection. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Azevedo? Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Piccirilli, the floor is yours.
Let's begin with the last thing that you just heard. I was contacted by these 3 teachers a few days ago because their union told them that they would not represent them here tonight. They told them they had 2 options: get the vaccine or quit. That's not representation. That's abdication of representation. The union has an absolute right under Rhode Island law to represent all teachers being faced with termination and to make all available defenses, not to pick and choose based upon what their personal beliefs are. It's pretty clear that NEA's belief is that all teachers should be vaccinated. They've taken a political stance on that. And they've advocated their obligations to teachers like this. I contacted John DeCulis, the Attorney General Counsel for the NEA, a couple of days ago to find out if this could possibly be true. And he told me in no uncertain terms, absolutely, that the union was not going to represent these teachers.
That is a lie.
Suddenly, I followed that up with an email. And in response to that email, John changed his tune and said suddenly that they would be here to represent these teachers. But when I asked what was that representation going to be, well, you heard it. That's not the full defense. So let me get right into that. First of all, this is completely inappropriate procedure. The school district attorney is making the presentation for the superintendent. That's not proper. The superintendent should be making the presentation. It is his recommendation to you. He has an obligation under the law to make that representation to you. He can't hide behind his attorney. Because he's done that, he's been able to avoid questions from the committee. Those questions have been directed to his attorney. Another inappropriate procedure. But that's just the beginning. Let's start with what exactly is being done here. As I read the letters from the superintendent, it is pretty clear there is no exemption, religious, or quite frankly, otherwise it's written into his letter, for the mandate to have the vaccine by November 1st. Any discussion about sincerely held beliefs is completely inappropriate. And while it's interesting that the Superintendent's Council has seen fit to cite cases out of, for example, Indianapolis about pronouns, I could cite a case out of Fourth Circuit, I believe, in Virginia, which reinstated a professor who was fired for not using pronouns. So we can go back and forth on that. Totally irrelevant to why we're here. Let's get to the point here. What these teachers are being terminated for is insubordination. An allegation that they refused to comply with a reasonable and valid policy of this committee. The Commissioner of Education of Rhode Island has made clear that there can be no insubordination if the policy is neither valid nor reasonable, and yours is neither. And this is why. To be valid, you have to have some statutory authority to pass this policy. As I understand the way you did it, there was a meeting on August 24th. And at that meeting, on the agenda, what appeared was amended general and interim emergency policy on COVID-19 related issues. That's it. Nothing about a vaccine mandate for teachers. Now, it may have been buried in that policy, but the public notice that was published didn't say that. There are two Rhode Island Supreme Court cases, Analik and Tanner. I'm sure both of your attorneys know those cases. They stand for the proposition that a public body must provide fair notice to the public under the circumstance, or such notice based upon the totality of circumstances as would fairly inform the public of the nature of the business to be discussed and acted upon. I would suggest to you that under no reasonable interpretation would a member of the public read amended general interim policy to mean you're going to be mandating vaccines for staff. You violated the open meeting law when you passed this policy. You violated it a second time when you renewed it, or read it a second time on September 2nd. When you do that, the Attorney General will declare the policy void. That's number one. Number two, in your policy you cite for your authority 1629, Rhode Island General Laws, and about 5 subsections of that, 1, 2, 5, 8, and 24. I'm not going to spend time, your council mentioned the care, control, and management. That's kind of a catch-all that school committees like to cite to the unions all the time when they say they can do whatever they want. And unions usually fight over that, but not in this case. But what you didn't cite was 1621-7. Did anybody of your council tell you about that statute? That statute says, all schools shall have a school health program that shall be approved by the state director of the Department of Health and the Commissioner of Education. What is that? That's this. School health regulations passed by the Department of Health in conjunction with the Department of Education, governing everything from vision and hearing screening to the administration of an EpiPen to who can give a kid an Advil, and what hundreds and hundreds of chemicals which are banned from schools. These policies have been in effect since at least 1964. I believe they were last amended in 2014. Actually has a provision in this policy for immunization of children. There's a statute in Rhode Island, 23, it's 23, I think it's 2384. that governs, it's under the Department of Health, Title 23, and it governs immunizations. That power lies solely within the Department of Health. You have absolutely no power to mandate a vaccine to teachers, to students, or anyone else. Has the Department of Health issued a mandate for vaccinating teachers? No. Has the governor issued an emergency order mandating the vaccination of teachers? No. For them to do that, they'd have to pass either a regulation under the school health regulations or do it by emergency rule. That's how they did the vaccine mandates for healthcare workers, by an emergency rule. To do that, you have to have a finding of imminent peril. If the state of Rhode Island Department of Health has not found imminent peril for unvaccinated teachers, who are you to find that? The union doesn't seem to agree with my argument on this point. I believe that any such mandate would be a mandatory subject to bargaining, not just the effects of it, because there is no statewide mandate that you have to follow. This isn't, they expanded the school day from 6.5 hours to 7 hours. You have to have a 7-hour day, and then you're just going to negotiate the impact of that with your teachers. That's not what's going on here. And the union used to have very strong opinions about that, as I'm sure your council knows. The second point of a policy has to be its reasonableness. What's so reasonable about a policy that you're the only district in the state, except maybe Little Compton, this is the first I've heard of that. I thought they also had an opt-out, but maybe I'm wrong. Then even if you're one of 2 out of 39 school districts in the state, not to mention charter schools or regional districts, again, who are you to make that determination when no other committee in the state has done so? Your students and staff are more important than the rest of the state? It's absurd. And part of the reasonableness is offering alternatives. You've been operating, presumably from the beginning of this school year at least, with the same type of mitigation strategies you've had previously. Masking, ventilation, cleaning, etc. Those strategies have worked. Maybe not perfectly, but there is no perfect. The vaccines are not perfect. You know that. Dr. McDonald testified under oath in court about a week ago that vaccines don't prevent you from getting the virus. It doesn't prevent you from spreading the virus. It only prevents you from getting more sick from the virus. He testified to that under oath. So if someone tells you the vaccine prevents you from getting or giving the virus, they're lying to you. And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe me, call Dr. McDonald. I'm sure he'll tell you what he testified to last week. He'll also tell you that not one person under the age of 25 in the state has died of COVID. Not one. This is a disease that affects older people and people in ill health. That's undisputed. He'll also tell you that currently, for the last 2 weeks at least, there hasn't even been one COVID hospitalization, pediatric hospitalization. Not one. This is not a situation where your kids are getting sick and going to the hospital and dying. It's not happening. And to give that impression is a disservice to your staff, to the public. If you leave that impression out there, you have an obligation as public officials not to spread that kind of information. So, what about that point about the vaccine keeping you from getting sicker? Well, there's a lot of things that we do that are not very healthy. People drink, people smoke, people eat fast food. You're going to mandate that people can't, the teachers can't do that next? That'll keep them healthier. It's ludicrous. You can't impose a mandate like that because you think it's the best for them. This doesn't work that way. Now, before my clients, I'm just going to read a statement. But before they do, I just have one last technical point. And I've already talked to your counsel about this, and I understand he disagrees with me. About 2 years ago, there was a case in South Kingstown of a teacher who was terminated. He was terminated on May, effective that coming school year. Commissioner of Education initially ruled that termination could take effect immediately, notwithstanding Title 1613, Section 1613.3, which states unequivocally notice has to be provided by March 1st. That case was overturned by a Superior Court judge, and the judgment became final. If you terminate these teachers, whether you do it tonight or you do it on January 1st, if it is ultimately upheld, it cannot take effect until next school year. That case is Salvador versus South Kingstown, and the attorneys on that case were John DeCubulis representing the teacher, and Sarah Rapport, your counsel. Have the teachers, did you decide who's going to go first?
My name is Carrie Thurber, and I have been a chorus and music teacher at Barrington Middle School for the past 20 years. I have loved my time here in Barrington, as well as the thousands of students I have been blessed to teach so far in my career. From the beginning of the pandemic, I, like all other teachers, have had to adapt to new ways of teaching. I took online workshops, watched multiple webinars, explored new software and apps that would make online and hybrid learning as successful as possible. It is far from easy to take a hands-on subject and make it work in an online or hybrid format. I also had to learn audio and video recording, processing, and editing to create performances for these performance-based classes that I teach. When we were allowed back to school in person last fall, I followed all of the districts, RIDOs, and the CDC's guidance. In addition, I personally sought out multiple webinars and meetings that helped the middle school community have a vibrant chorus program while being safe. I found creative ways to showcase the great work my students were doing all year and spent countless hours at home processing and editing audio and video in order for families to enjoy their children's chorus performances throughout the year. For the past 20 months, I have made many changes and accommodations in order for my students to receive a quality education during this pandemic. Now, when I ask for the district to honor my legal religious right to an accommodation, which would be to continue teaching in the same manner before this vaccine mandate was introduced, the school committee and central administration have decided to do something I could never do, and that is to let our students down. You feel that it's a better idea for students to lose out on a quality education and terminate me instead of allowing me to continue teaching the students of this town as I have been this whole time. On our first Teacher PD Day, on August 30th, I read an email from our union president stating that the school committee voted to mandate the COVID vaccine for the BPS employees. I was in shock. How can my employer mandate a medical intervention as condition of employment? Why wasn't this negotiated with our union? What does this mean for me and my family, for whom I am the sole provider? Because of my religious beliefs, they would certainly honor an accommodation, wouldn't they? It is the law, after all. After not receiving any policy information about this from central administration or my union president for the next couple of weeks, I decided to send Mr. Masori a letter requesting a religious accommodation on September 17th, knowing that our district accepts medical and religious accommodations for student vaccinations. He wrote back to me shortly after and stated he would be forwarding my letter to Doug Fiore. On the evening of October 18th, 31 days after I submitted a letter requesting a religious accommodation, I was notified that my request was denied due to there being an undue burden to the district if they were to honor my religious accommodation rights as granted to me by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. No one from central administration ever reached out to me during those 31 days or tried to find an amenable accommodation that the district and I could work with, which should have been for me to continue to work in the same manner I had for the past 20 months. Why would I suddenly be a danger to my students and colleagues? Not last year, not this year, not today, not tomorrow. Do I suddenly become a COVID super spreader on November 1st? I feel as though I should share my religious beliefs with you as it is within your right to ask that of me. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 through 20 says, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, who you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price, so glorify God in body." 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 also states, "If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple." God designed us to live in this world as it is, and our bodies were created to deal with viruses. Secondly, it is imperative for me as a faithful person to stand up against tyranny and stand up for the less fortunate. We are supposed to fight for truth, for honesty, and for consent. All of this is being taken away by mandating this vaccine as a condition of our employment. Lastly, another important religious belief of mine is to not be afraid. The phrase "do not be afraid" is actually the most frequently written command in the Bible. I think we all need to realize that living in fear is no way to live. I pray for the day when we can all no longer live in fear of this virus and start living a purpose-filled life again.
Good evening. I stand before you tonight as an educator who has been denied a religious accommodation by Barrington Public Schools for the COVID-19 vaccine. I am Stephanie Hines. I am facing termination due to insubordination. I'm unsure how I have been insubordinate when I have done nothing but follow the protocols that were stated to me on September 21st. Many of you don't know me personally. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I have used my belief system to guide all of my decisions, including accepting a job at Barrington Public Schools in 2016, despite having other offers at the time. Additionally, I'm a wife and a mother of 3 children, 2, 4, and 6. I'm here to advocate not only for myself, but also for my children. And I hope that they will never be faced with termination from employment based on their faith. One of the most discouraging things to me in this process is that I feel deceived and blindsided. While the school committee approved this mandate on August 24th, it was not communicated to the teachers until September 21st, nearly a month later, even though the letter was dated a day before. I could have used that extra month in the beginning of the year to consider other employment options when jobs are more plentiful. In the notification email from Mr. Masori, it said to kindly submit a request for religious exemption as per Title VII in a timely fashion. I sent my request 3 days later on September 24th. I was never informed of the process or who would be on the review committee. In addition, it was so long between receiving an answer that I ended up not even being able to receive both doses by the November 1st deadline. I regretfully took this as a sign that my request would be accepted. Unfortunately, on Monday, October 18th, I was denied my request for religious accommodation. I was called an undue hardship. My family, a household who relies on 2 incomes, was told that we had less than 2 weeks to prepare to be placed on an unpaid leave unless I began the vaccination process. Even after seeking counsel by the union, I was told that my only options were to resign before my employment record was permanently damaged due to insubordination or go get the vaccine. Another piece of the deception is that I was told that this is a pre-termination hearing, and I've already seen my full-time job posted on SchoolSpring as in a part-time capacity. The last 9 days have felt like an absolute whirlwind. Personally, I have been impacted. I can't sleep or eat. My stomach is in knots, and even worse, I couldn't even look at my students without being upset. I have worked through this pandemic since March 13th, 2020. I would like further clarification on how I am an undue burden. One burden listed in my denial letter was that the students I work with are ineligible to receive vaccination. As of Tuesday, this is no longer true, as the FDA panel authorized the vaccine for students aged 5 to 11 whose parents choose to do so. There is a good chance that younger students will be eligible for a vaccine in the early weeks of November. In Barrington's COVID protocol, unvaccinated teachers have been identified and are subject to weekly testing, masking protocols, daily attestation, and a 7-day quarantine. Vaccinated teachers, however, are held to a different standard when it comes to being quarantined. While I understand that this is simply following protocol put out by the Department of Health in the Rhode Island playbook, I'd like to point out that because of this different standard, I was quarantined by a vaccinated teacher who caught it from another vaccinated teacher. Who was present at school on day 5 of exposure. This ultimately led to 2 classrooms being shut down and our staff receiving an email from the Department of Health, and it led to every person, vaccinated or not, who had stepped foot in those classrooms to need a negative PCR test to return back to school. It began an outbreak. On the other hand, when I had to quarantine, I couldn't return to work until day 8. This outbreak would not have occurred if we were held to the same standard. It also shows that the burden does not solely rest upon the unvaccinated. Instead of considering how I might hypothetically be a burden should I be subject to quarantine, here are some very real undue burdens I see for this district as of November 1st. My students won't receive their targeted instruction from me to help close the gap and will likely see a lapse in their service from a certified reading specialist. My family will lose half of its income immediately and our health insurance after December. And the Barrington School Department is going to have to go through the effort of finding another highly qualified educator who has specialized training in Orton-Gillingham. In conclusion, Barrington Public Schools prides themselves on being the best in the state. This is part of Mr. Masori's opening statement every year when we have new hires, that we have really great people because this is a really great district. Barrington also prides itself on being an inclusive and diverse school system. As an employee, I expected a more inclusive decision. By denying the 3 or 4 teachers who have sincerely held religious beliefs, no matter what sect it's from, you are stripping your school system of diversity and representation. I'm disappointed and burdened by this policy and your decision to not accommodate religious exemptions. Regardless of your decision tonight, though, I know that I can hold my head high that I stay true to my beliefs. Thank you.
My name is Brittany DiOrio. I am a special education teacher at Solom School and work with children who have varying levels of special needs. I live here in Barrington with my husband and 2 young children. I'm not here to disparage any of you or the administrators, and I'm not here to debate the efficacy of the vaccine. I think it's important that you have some knowledge of me as a person and as a teacher, and perhaps you will see how being terminated will devastate my family and I financially, professionally, and emotionally. I grew up in this town. My parents and grandparents have been longtime residents, business owners, and served on town committees in Barrington for 70 years since the early 50s. My husband's parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles have also been longtime residents and business owners in this town for 90 years since the 1930s. When the opportunity to teach in Barrington came up last October, I jumped at the chance. I gave up a 12-year teaching position in Pawtucket to join the Barrington schools. I have a bachelor's degree with a double major in early childhood education and special education. Additionally, I was in the state's first cohort of teachers from 2 school districts to become certified and earn my master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages and bilingual language immersion from the University of Rhode Island. I, along with RIDE and the Rhode Island Foundation, invested thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in my education. Additionally, I've been rated highly effective in my last 2 performance assessments in Pawtucket and effective in my first year here at SOMS. You see, Barrington prides itself on being the top public school in Rhode Island. Myself and others with similar types of credentials, experience, and the passion to teach are some of the reasons Barrington can claim this badge of honor. The investment you make to maintain this top spot by recruiting teachers like me and retaining the high quality of teachers who work here is enormous. Teachers and people all over are following this and interested in what the outcome will be. Being one of 3 districts in the state of Rhode Island's 37, Barrington's actions will be followed closely by teachers throughout the state and the wider community. How you treat teachers, even a small minority like us, matters deeply. Treating people with respect, dignity, and a sense of fairness affects who you will be able to attract and retain in the future. On September 16th, I had a conversation with a union representative. I was told that exemptions would not be accepted and I would be put on unpaid leave, then terminated. I emailed Superintendent Missouri and I expressed my panic and concern over the potential loss of my job. Through email correspondence, Superintendent Missouri wrote, and I quote, "You were provided with inaccurate information. In the signed MOA with the union, if you look at number 2, you will see the statement that all unvaccinated staff must wear 2 masks or a KN95 mask, as well as being placed on a mandated testing schedule." I then met with Mr. Missouri in his office, who again referenced the MOA and was told if I followed protocols of weekly testing, wearing a KN95 mask, and filling out a daily attestation form, that I would not be terminated. Mr. Missouri, you even asked before I left your office, do you feel better now? Over the past week, we've been told in writing the following things. Refusing the vaccine is considered insubordination. Number 2, disciplinary action is being taken. Number 3, we will be terminated for cause, which likely makes us ineligible for unemployment. Number 4, being terminated for cause requires us to disclose on future employment applications that we have been involuntarily terminated for insubordination. Number 5, we may opt to resign rather than be fired, so we have better chance or outlook in finding another position. Number 6, I've been denied a religious exemption without engaging in an interactive process to identify reasonable accommodations. As if the termination action isn't severe enough, taking additional actions such as disciplinary, suspension, classification of insubordination all have an immediate impact on my ability to find other employment, even in districts that don't require the vaccine and in other fields. This seems to cross over the fairness line and is completely disproportionate to not getting the vaccine. I have done nothing wrong. My performance is effective, yet you are willing to terminate me and take it a step further and destroy my future ability to earn a living. I have followed all protocols that you have asked me to follow. What suddenly changed when we have worked all throughout the pandemic? Why all of a sudden am I being terminated without discussions of accommodations? I was never out of compliance with what you asked me to do. What makes me more of a threat to others' safety now, especially since you've had 2 fully vaccinated teachers spread COVID to students and shut down 2 classrooms with more than 50 staff and students the week of October 4th? Is this how a highly rated school department treats its highly valued teachers? Is it possible that other highly educated and highly qualified teachers hearing how this is unfolding may think twice about working for Barrington Public Schools? I hope you all can truly reflect on the decisions you are making and how these decisions will affect me, my 2 young children, and my family, as well as my students and my fellow teachers.
Well, I can't improve on that, but there's nothing else to say. Does anyone the school committee have any questions for the three teachers or Mr. Piccirilli?
Really nice? Wow. Thank them for their
Okay.
service. Are we allowed to ask questions of the administration based on things that they have raised?
The administration can respond at this point, but before we do that, are there any questions for the three teachers or Mr. Piccirilli?
I was a little confused about, I think one person said that you got notified at the end of August before school started by the union that there was a mandate, and then another person said that there was a letter in September. I just wanted to clarify when you guys first heard from anybody that there was a vaccine mandate.
The union notified us, but what they said was that negotiations were still undergoing and more would be communicated to us later.
Okay.
And I had a conversation on September 16th with a union representative. I was, prior to leaving, September 16th was a holiday for Barrington. The day before was a union meeting, and I had asked her, I know the mandate is in place, what are the protocols for unvaccinated staff members, and what are the steps that we need to take? She gave me a phone call on September 16th, relayed the message to me that they are not accepting any exemptions. You would be put on an unpaid leave as to not collect unemployment and then terminated.
Are there any other questions for the three teachers or Mr. Piccirilli? Does the administration have anything